Hello, everyone, and welcome to this roundtable. My name is Maria, the head of retail here at Reuters Events, and I'll be moderating this roundtable on the topic of omnichannel optimization. I'm here today with Gina, Jason, Wayne, John, and Melissa, and we'll start with a short introduction from our panelists, and after that, we'll dive in straight into the topic. Don't forget that this is an interactive session, and we have a Q&A function available, and make sure to submit your questions, and I'll leave a few minutes at the end aside to answer them. So we'll start with some quick introductions from everyone. And Jason, I'll start with you.
Hey all, my name is Jason Lerman. I'm the Director of Operations here at Untuckit. I've been in the retail, e-commerce apparel industry for a little over 8 years now. And I am specifically in charge of our 3PLs, of omni-channel experiences here at Untuckit, system integrations, and a couple of other hats that I wear too.
And I'll take you in the order of my screen on how you appear, Wayne.
Hi, my name is Wayne Snyder. I'm the Vice President of Retail Strategy across EMEA for Blue Yonder. We're a supply chain technology provider. I've worked in retail for about 25 years, mainly on the retail side, and then latterly on the software side.
And Gina?
Hi, I'm Gina Anderson. I'm with Geodis, and we are a global fourth-party logistics provider. I've spent about 30 plus years in supply chain. A lot of that's been spent into retail, and I head up their last mile solutions.
Lovely. And next up, we've got John.
Hi, Jonathan Gold. I'm the Vice President for Supply Chain and Customs Policy with the National Retail Federation. NRF, we're the world's largest retail trade association. We represent everybody from the small single store operators to large format big box stores. I've been with NRF now about 13 years, working on trade policy, supply chain related issues. Part of that was with Customs and Border Protection for about a year and a half, working on trade policy, cargo issues, and another retail trade association for 10 years prior to that, all working on trade and supply chain related issues.
Lovely. And last but not least, we've got Melissa.
Hi, I'm Melissa Valentine, and I run our retail vertical at Locust Robotics. So we are a provider of AMRs, autonomous mobile robots, for some of the world's largest global 3PLs and retailers. Prior to Locust, I spent a number of years selling supply chain software specifically to retailers and wholesalers, and have spent most of my career, which unfortunately is now very long, working in the retail space specifically. So delighted to be part of the panel, Maria.
Wonderful. I'm so glad to have you all here with me today. And this is a really juicy topic, I think. So I'm really excited to dive into it. And I'll start with Jason, the in-house retailer here. And I really want to begin by kind of taking you a little bit back to March and to ask you more about your experience over the last 6 months towards omni-channel fulfillment and optimization, where you are at now and what your biggest challenges along the way have been.
Sure. Yeah, March was a tough month for all of us and everyone here on this call, and I'm sure everyone listening. We received word late March, as most of the nation did, that we had to shut down stores. We have 80 stores globally, majority here in the US, some in Canada and some in the UK. We did think that it was temporary and ended up lasting for 2 whole months. During those 2 months, there was a lot of strategizing and trying to figure out what could we do to help the stores when they get back. What will life be like for our store associates, for the customers coming in? Will people want to shop? Will it be majority online? What would the in-store experience be like? And a lot of trial and error and local government ordinances and things of that nature. But one of the, what I'd like to say is successful pieces that we were able to launch just in time for the stores to reopen was Omnichannel Fulfillment, or BOSS, buy online, ship from store. And I think that was a huge driver in helping to support the business during these really tough times. And it was really exciting for me to be able to implement that as it was our first time doing so with a company of this size. And it was really successful. We there was a lot of product in a lot of our back rooms, a lot of stock that just was sitting there, not being sold, not exposed online, and having the opportunity to expose that to customers who are maybe not feeling as comfortable walking into stores, but still looking to shop and buy. We lit up all the back rooms, and we were able to do some heavy fulfilling and bring our weeks of supply down. So it was quite successful, and we continued to work towards new goals and new KPIs and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. What have been some of your biggest hurdles in the process?
I think adoption with the associates in the store, following the processes, ensuring that SLAs that we currently have with our 3PLs are followed in store. Turning a store into a little mini warehouse location was interesting, and we had to build out the back room to support that, both for packaging needs and having the space for the associates to be able to pick, pack, and ship, and the room in the back room for FedEx or same-day delivery options to come and pick the product up. I think currently what the goal was to let's move some of this product from the back rooms to the customers in ways that we weren't able to do it. Now that we've reduced weeks on supply pretty successfully, we now have to start to think about how do we create more dynamic experiences for both the associate and the customers through shipping needs? How do we drive down shipping costs? How do we limit split ships? Do all of our stores need to be participating, or could we be unique with what stores in different regions participate in this? So a lot of those questions are up in the air now. A lot of A/B testing and just data collection has been really important.
I think because we have so many different types of people in this group, I would love to get the thoughts on what Jason just said from Wayne, Gina, John, and Melissa. Whoever would like to start first. Sorry, John, go on.
No, I'm happy to start. I think what Jason just described is what a lot of our members faced throughout this pandemic. I think the biggest concern from a lot of members was the early shutdown back in March, where there were determinations on who was essential and who was non-essential. Obviously, the essential retailers were able to stay open and continue to sell, and made changes to their store formats, layouts to allow customers to come in. But those non-essential retailers really were struggling early on, trying to figure out how do they stay in business. So we kind of joke a little bit that there were basically 3 years worth of innovation done in the first 3 months of this pandemic as companies tried to adjust and focus on the e-commerce, which we saw explode early on during the pandemic. The move to the buy online, pick up in store certainly surged as companies tried to figure out how do they maintain that, and that continues. And I think the other point is that, at least here in the United States, it was very difficult for national retailers when we had differing sets of standards for how you could operate based on essential, not essential, and that continues today. And I think the concern as we look at this, I guess, third wave now of the spikes that we're seeing and the potential for additional shutdowns, that's going to be a little bit tough for folks to try and figure out how to move forwards. I think, from our perspective going forwards, we want to avoid the essential, non-essential discussion and just figure out, let's not focus on what we sell, but how do we sell it? If we're able to sell the product in the way that keeps our customers and our employees safe, then you should be able to remain open and not worry about having to close down again. If you're meeting the federal and state requirements, that's what the focus should be on, is how do you shop safe and not on what you're purchasing. So that's our hope for going forwards, and something that we continue to stress through NRF and all the work we've been doing, trying to educate lawmakers and the public about how to shop in a safe manner and protect our employees as well.
Interesting. I wanted to direct the conversation on the consumer and where the consumer comes into this omnichannel fulfillment, how you get to know them, how you get to use the data to kind of determine where to take the inventory, where to allocate it, if that makes sense, the tools that's needed behind that, basically that popular race to the consumer and how we get there the fastest.
I think there's two ways to look at that, or to apply to the consumer. I think For Boss, buy online, ship from store, it's a little bit more operational, surprise and delight sort of thing. I think everyone here on this call would love to get their product quicker without any sort of issues with tracking and delays and things of that nature. So being able to ship from a region to where the product is going to is an exciting feat, and get it there quick and fast and as little packaging and packages as possible. But then you've got the BOPIS piece, which is a little bit different, where you will build that relationship with the customer because you are pushing them to come to the store, and then you are having those conversations. And so the technology will, I think, provide for both of those experiences, but you might have a different customer who is maybe a little bit more cavalier today, who is willing to go to the store, willing to have those interactions, and you got to build on that versus maybe someone just who doesn't feel as comfortable leaving their home and just wants to do the online shopping experience, but still get that surprise and delight experience.
Yeah, it's important, Jason, what you were just saying about surprise and delight. In my head, I was thinking about this time. It's really interesting on how important customer experience is. And one of the things that I'm curious to see, because I could see it brewing already, is the BOPIS and the challenges when you do go to a store and there isn't an organized manner for which to get your package or get your order. And I know there's lots of trainings going on with lots of brands trying to train their employees so that there is a nice customer experience, but there are thousands and thousands of employees in such a short period of time. There could be some challenges about picking up in store. And even when you think about what's going on with the parcel carriers right now and the challenges on getting your packages through the USPS, I think there's another customer experience when you can't get an answer because you don't know where your package is. So it's interesting timing right now, and how brands will have to figure out what's the best way to get that customer experience. And I do think the brands that are getting the packages closer to the customer, and like Jason and Untuckit being able to utilize their store footprint to do that, it's not too late for brands to do this. This is something that that there's ability to do that out there right now. And kudos to Jason and their team for making that happen. And hopefully other brands will jump on board and start doing that.
Yeah.
I just build on that for myself. I think I would also have the challenge is really there is no such thing as a consumer. We all know that there are literally millions of different people have all with different challenges and all with different needs. Some of them want value speed, some value availability, some value price, some value a convenient experience, some value an immersive experience. And I think what we're seeing today is that need for that personalization, and also to add to that almost a contextualization and understanding of what, even as a person, I change my mood different during the course of the day, and what at different times kind of requires a different experience for my retailer. So I think for me, a key part of this is going to be, it's talked about a lot, is kind of the need to be data driven. And also I'd add to that scalable. So I think when we look at a lot of retailers across EMEA, as John touched on, kind of the innovation that happened during COVID is really a thing to respect. But at the same time, because it's been rushed, it's meant that a lot of those processes are not as scalable and as robust as they need to be. So I think the next stage for everybody is to build into that those proper processes, that it's no longer a kind of a reaction to a situation, but actually it's just an everyday occurrence where you're thinking about what the implications are. So it's not just about selling stock in a store, it's about understanding how you need to position the stores, locations of the stores, the customer experience, that personalization I talked about. So the next kind of, as I say, it's amazing to see what's happened, but for me the next step is even harder, that it's really about making it scalable and robust.
What is, in everyone's opinion, it's the question for all of you, what are some of the key components of a flexible omni-channel network strategy? What are the essentials that we need to make this work?
I'd say definitely diversifying your carrier solutions. Right now, there's a lot of legacy design out there where brands have been in the traditional model where their DCs are in certain locations or stores are in certain locations. And I think the diversification of the carriers and re-network design is probably one of the key components.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And having the tools to support that is so important. There's so much opportunity for local last mile delivery opportunities, which I think is huge because it's providing just another experience to allow the customer in that given moment in time to choose between, do I need it in 2 days, or do I need it the same day, or do I need it next day? One of the challenges that I find, though, is that there's just so many of these options in different regions and areas. How do you consolidate it through technology? How do I, on a corporate level, oversee what everything is going on? How do I oversee the 70 stores that are shipping product out through various different diversified last mile delivery carriers, things of that nature, so that I can make quick decisions, turn on, turn off, notice issues, and things of that nature. But I definitely agree with both Gina and Wayne on that one.
Oh, sorry. So there's a few points there. The visibility part. You need to be able to see everything that's going on. And I wanted to direct this to the inventory aspect of the omnichannel fulfillment. You obviously were using your stores as part of your fulfillment network. What have you noticed in terms of visibility over that inventory and being able to fulfill the customer expectations?
I think that one thing to keep in mind are race conditions. Is a customer in the store trying that last piece on that maybe is exposed online? So safety stock is definitely something that's helpful there. But we still see those issues arise. Having a good inventory system, visibility, being able to view, by SKU, inventory detail reports, and you can kind of scope things and really put your managers in charge of their in-store inventory, really holding them accountable, ensuring that everything that comes in or that comes out is being logged and recorded and systematically, of course, so that it's not just someone up at corporate pulling all their hair out, figuring out why aren't units there when they should be, and things of that nature. So ensuring that your store managers are equipped with the right tools and are able to, essentially manage their store like your general manager would at a warehouse, making sure things are labeled and correctly, listed out there. Yeah.
I mean, from our research, we find from surveys that over 80% of retailers tell us that they still do not feel that they have proper omnichannel processes. And if you consider that the concept's been around for near 20 years, there's a lot of catching up to do. And I think that we see that the changes that are happening now, where you have to think about this omnichannel world across everything. So you talked about inventory, Maria. Obviously, in terms of how you position the inventory, it's not just about the store shopper, that how many companies are fulfilling the buy online, pick up in store with disconnected processes to how store deliveries are made, which can therefore be very expensive. What assortment you have in your stores, and thinking again, it's not just about the store shopper, but it's about that whole omnichannel shopper. So there's a lot of changes, I think, that need to be made in a lot of organizations to deliver that flexibility. And obviously a key component that a lot of people are focusing on is really how do you utilize that inventory most effectively at the end. But the reality is, if you treat it like that, all you're really doing is best managing a problem. And you need to get to the stage where it's much more planned and much more deliberate. So you're never going to get something perfect. That part will remain the same. But actually, the more you can be in control of your inventory and thinking about the more holistic shopper, the better planned you'll be for those eventualities.
Sorry, you could go on.
Gina?
I was just going to say that what I find being in the last mile, the inventory management and technology that has not caught up with what the capabilities technically are, to Wayne's point. And one of the things that I think is challenging is figuring out how do we utilize not only our stores, but how do we utilize our partners to put forward stocking locations to where we can, at least in this network redesign, or how we're rethinking our our technology and what new technology do we need to be able to get these packages closer to the consumer is a big challenge. And one of the things I just recommend companies try to do is utilize their partners to do some of these studies. There's lots of talent out there inside of our company, Geodis, and others, where we can do some what if modeling and utilize your partners to try to see if there's some relief there. I think also I can talk to a company called Toshi. They're bringing the customer experience to the consumer, and they're giving the luxury brands, it's primarily with luxury brands right now, their technology that goes onto their website so that the same day experiential delivery can happen. So there are other technologies out there that could make a brand, I guess, be able to offer this in-store experience or this luxury experience and use the technology to help them to do that. Again, I know the inventory management systems in some cases are antiquated, but when you're thinking about what do we need to do to improve, I think that's one of the areas that is really important to look at. What are your providers able to provide you, and then come together and all work together in those scenario models.
Yeah, planning and allocation tools, I think, are very helpful in supporting that. Data is just so huge, and it's not as sexy collecting it, but when you have it and can use it, that's where like sparks fly. And it's very important, and that's what we're doing now as we're going through the motions and the trial and errors of Boss and Omni, and seeing what works and what doesn't, collecting all of these little data points, and being able to provide a story and pivot from one way to another is super important too. But yeah, I mean, there's challenges. You know, do we pick, pack, and ship from a warehouse to load up a store just to then ship it to, you know, regions within there? You might end up spending a lot more money and hurting your margins that way. And so how do you find that happy medium? And yeah, using partners and hearing networking and other people's experiences. We're not the only ones doing this. So seeing if someone else has come through with a better plan, you know, is helpful.
Did you have a lot of the tools there, Jason, when you were, you know, this is pandemic's hitting, you're seeing all this hit your stores, hit your people, your technology, all at the same time? Did you have the ability to assess and to get the data to where you could actually look at it and it be useful?
I personally, for us, I think we were in such a rush just to be innovative and get above in front of the curve, and just kind of you know, be as helpful to both the company and ensure that it survives, and then to our associates and then customers. I think that a lot of the data now is coming in and being assessed after the fact. I'd love to be able to assess data and implement systems and projects after we've got a good game plan. I think this came, you know, this creeped up. We've always had plans to go Omni. We've always had plans for Boss. It's all over NRF when you go in the Javits Center. I mean, it's the buzzword of the last 3 years. So, you know, it was only fitting for Untuckit to move forward with it, but we definitely sped everything up after COVID hit. We had 2 months of stores not open, and we had the time to really implement and get it out so that we can support the company and the stores.
I mean, I think that
So
data.
Jason, this may be. Oh, go ahead, Wayne.
Please do, Ms. Lissa.
Well, I was going to get slightly off topic. I was actually curious to hear a little bit about from Jason and probably Gina too, but as stores and fulfillment sites reopened, any challenges with labor and staffing and social distancing? I realize it's a little off topic, but certainly kind of curious to hear some perspective on that. You know, what types of challenges and implications it's had on your staffing and labor models?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. Every county, every state has different laws, rules, regulations. Some stores were allowed to open, some weren't. Well, some of our stores were in malls, and the entire malls were closed down, so those were delayed versus maybe a freestanding store or somewhere that isn't part of a mall. this was such a tumultuous year, and just between protests and COVID scares and just things going on, stores were opening and closing constantly. And even shipping product out, sometimes FedEx just couldn't show up because of other priorities or things going on within their network. So, you know, it was definitely challenging. I think we've got a pretty good handle on it now. But you know, it's like a survival sort of thing that survival mode we went into.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were more going through the paperwork of being, you know, an essential business, and then the protocols, deploying the protocols so that we could continue to move our clients' packages and receive packages and pick, pack, and ship in the new COVID protocols. So for us, it was just that initial plethora of paperwork, and then of course putting our people first. And but again, same with Jason, different regulations, different scenarios, city by city, state by state. But I don't feel that our clients were impacted because we were able to. We didn't really have to shut down. We had the ability to go down the route of being an essential business. So we didn't have it probably as hard as retailers, for sure.
But I think Jason, to your point, though, I think that being able to benchmark with other retailers, both in your space and others, is critical to figure out how folks are able to address some of these core issues. I mean, we launched our Operation Open Doors early on to try and work with our members to make sure they're fully aware of all the different issues that were out there, both as they're shut down and as they're reopening. That labor piece is a huge component to that. And we are continuing to do calls twice a week with our members, doing benchmarking, where they're able to talk about all these different issues. We've got, you know, through the Operation Open Doors, we launched a map to try and tell folks what the different regulations are and requirements are at the state and local level. So that education is critical to be able to continue to focus and continue to go forwards. And I think the ongoing concern is that, you know, we're not done with this. It's going to continue as we see these spikes. And I think the other thing we need to think about is we're looking at the logistic challenges that exist today. As we start to look at how the vaccine is then distributed, what kind of an impact is that going to have on the logistics network overall, as that takes a priority over your regular parcel shipments? And I think there's a lot of questions about how that's going to work and what kind of capacity that's going to soak up as we get into this, you know, the critical holiday season now. I mean, I think we all recognize you're not going to start seeing that distribution until later on this year, maybe not until 2021. But I think that's something we need to start thinking about, is that how much of that capacity is going to be taken up with that distribution. Is going to happen at both, you know, at the local level as well. So, you know, I had a question from one of my members with regards to impact on dry ice and the availability of dry ice. So I think there's just some things that folks might not be thinking about today that we need to really start thinking about what impact it's going to have down the road.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that I think that, people talk a lot about kind of the new normal we're in. And I think to John's point, I would describe it as kind of, we're going to have actually a series of lots of temporary normals where things are going to kind of change consistently. And it's going to take a long time to settle down to anything where there's a consistency. And I think as a result, from our side, kind of we're definitely seeing an even greater focus on the need for that data and visibility that was talked about. I know on a personal level, when I first was doing retail far too long ago, you know, even then we were there was too much data to know what to do with it. And now the rise has been exponential, and I think a lot of companies are absolutely struggling. And but I think kind of the fortunate thing for it is that actually technology, I would say really for the first time, has caught up with the use of things like machine learning and some of the automations that we're seeing across the whole supply chain. That means that actually we can start utilize these things in a new way. And kind of, you know, a lot's been talked about the utilization of data for a long time, but actually, you know, the reality is not always met with the kind of the theory. But I think now with kind of the technology catching up and its ability to kind of scale and really kind of get to understand the patterns and kind of different unique characteristics, I think that is going to be a huge enabler. And I think from our side, we're definitely seeing most of our customers coming to us and really understanding that the challenge through COVID, whether it be resources, I think Melissa alluded to, where, you know, everyone had struggles opening warehouses or having staff, or the move to work from home. is going to really accelerate that need for kind of automation and optimizations just to be running kind of continually to service the customer better.
Yeah, and I think, Wayne, to that point, you kind of lobbed it over, so I feel compelled to chime in. But from an automation perspective, I mean, we've certainly seen, as you can imagine, just quite an uptick in demand as these fulfillment and distribution centers are trying to meet these super volatile spikes in e-comm orders that are really unprecedented and weren't expected to happen until at least a couple of years out, and here we are. But leveraging different automation solutions, including what we're doing with robotics, but to really optimize the site to meet the demands, to meet SLAs, to increase cycle times and throughputs, and all things that are certainly important, especially when the labor models become increasingly more challenging and you're trying to zone and staff workers to increase safety and provide for social distancing. I think there's been quite an uptick in it, and people are still kind of maybe still scrambling because there is such an abundance of options as kind of what's the right approach or a combination of approaches to properly automate my network.
So Melissa, with that, just curious, because I know usually it takes months, if not years, to kind of get that into place in a network. How quickly now are you able to adjust and move and implement within kind of the retail space? Because I would imagine you've got to move pretty quickly now to address these issues.
No, spot on. And in terms of the work that we're doing at Locust, customers can get live in a matter of weeks. So we had a customer over in Europe that was up and running within just a couple of weeks, leveraging robots in their sites. But typically within a month or two, you can go from a standard brownfield site with existing infrastructure and drop in our technology and actually significantly improve, 2 to 3x times over. Sorry to make a sales pitch here, but productivity gains, right? So I agree with you. It's got to be pretty quick and turnkey, as opposed to some of the other options out there where it's really building a whole micro fulfillment center with a bunch of infrastructure. It just takes a lot longer. So it's how do you quickly kind of react to meet the demands and the changes that we're seeing.
It's interesting how quickly some brands are able to look at what they were doing before 6 months ago, and now the change that they've been able to do within 6 months. And kudos to the teams at these companies that have been able to do that, because quite frankly, the supplier's probably always been there saying, hey, we could do this in a matter of weeks for you. And then the company has not been able to execute on it for whatever reason, right? They have to get buy-in and sign-offs, but the buy-in and the sign-offs are happening a lot quicker. And it's, I do think a lot of it is utilizing the data in ways maybe they haven't been able to do before. And now it's accelerated due to the need and the constraints. So good to hear, Melissa, that you can pop up that quick. That's great.
Gina, I think to that point, I was gonna say, I think because now you have buy-off at the top level. I mean, I think, for so long, supply chain's always been kind of in the background where it was, folks didn't think about how the whole network worked. It's just, the buyers will go out and buy and we'll get it to the consumer at the end of the day. But now it's so front of mind for people that now at this, at the C-suite, supply chain is front of mind of how do we continue to operate. And I mean, Jason, I'm just curious from your perspective, how much did you guys have to sell your top C-level about the improvements that are needed and how quickly you need to do it?
It was pretty easy to do, everything going on. I think prior, it's costs are scary and the ROI isn't clear and you don't really know exactly how quickly you're going to get that ROI. But given that we were in survival mode, just like many other retailers, we were like, we need to do something quick, make some changes and be innovative for the customer and for ourselves. So the sign off was a bit easier to push through. Yeah. But yeah, to your point, I mean, just, logistics and cost, it's part of doing business and it's something that we all just take in, but being forced to really look at the cost and being forced now to really look at every penny and make sure that we're doing, putting our money to the right projects, the right plans and ensuring that our margins stay high. It's also pushed a lot of innovation too and questions. And do we need to be shipping this way or can we ship it another way? Or what sort of things could we do to really drive down costs as a company overall. There's a lot of frivolous spending, I think, prior to COVID, and now with COVID here and us being innovative, it's time to act smarter. And there's been a big push from C-suite down on doing so. So it's driving innovation as well.
What's interesting too for last mile, seeing brands like Lowe's and others put up lockers, to try to facilitate, the ease of being able to utilize that kind of technology for the consumer who does not want to go into the store and does not want to have that store experience. And that probably was not on the roadmap 6 months ago. Maybe it was, or if it was on the roadmap, certainly they weren't thinking they would be popping it up in fourth quarter of 2020. So in last mile, I think these are the types of innovations to continue to pursue and utilize, again, data, technology, and then where to spend your money. Where, to Jason's point, if data and need and the customer experience and all these things are coming together, where's the best bang for your buck right now? And what does that look like? And utilizing robotics, Melissa, that might be one of those areas that should be considered. So the innovation piece with last mile is quite exciting and quite interesting. E-commerce, obviously, as we all know, and many of the listeners and viewers are experiencing the same thing, this e-commerce growth. We need to continue to innovate and utilize last mile omni-channel to make those improvements and all the other technologies that can go with it.
I think from our side, we're seeing a lot of people wanting to use technology that also looks at a blended approach. So, maybe kind of a lot of systems in the past would say, well, for example, what was the cheapest route to market? But actually now when you're making decisions about utilizing your inventory, then actually it's not just the cheapest, it could be the speed, it could be the convenience. You could also have inventory sitting maybe 10 miles away in a store where there's excess inventory. So actually it's a much more cost-effective method of routing it from somewhere slightly further. But actually if you take into account the whole kind of end-to-end process and end-to-end cost, then it becomes cheaper. So from our side, I think that we're seeing a lot of people wanting to move away from taking decisions based on single factors and trying to utilize a lot of different factors in their decision making.
And building that lifelong customer relationship feeds into that as well. And maybe it might be expensive right off the bat, but if you're able to collect the data to see that this customer is a repeat customer because of the innovation that you've implemented, by tenfold, you'll make your investment back and just have great customer appreciation for the brand and whatnot. So, to your point, it was once, let's just get it there cheap. And when it gets there, it gets there. And now it's okay. Now we want to figure out how the customer experience looks. Are they updated with post-tracking information? And are they having these great experiences until the item gets there? Are we able to follow up with them soon after? It's an interesting way of thinking, and it's definitely a switch with C-level team members as well.
Yeah, to that point of decision making and getting the C-suite to agree on whatever investment or plans you've got, I'm really interested to hear from the tech providers really on how do you prove the ROI and what metrics do you use to provide the tools to Jason really to tell people this is the right investment to make. Melissa, with robots, like what is the data that you use to achieve that really?
Yeah, so the way we would typically operate is there's a bunch of critical inputs to gather from a customer in terms of, for robotics, it's about staffing and wage rates and volumes and productivity. There's a bunch of kind of key inputs that we then use to run through a very sophisticated model that our engineering team uses and creates an output that looks at the viability of the automation, the projected ROI, and is this, a project that makes sense? What's the time to payback? How does it affect the operation? What type of volume can you actually get through the site at that point as well, leveraging the technology? And then it becomes a very iterative process back with the customer to really align. Do we have the inputs right? Do the outputs look right? Are you comfortable with this? And the great thing is as customers have gone live, we've been able to kind of prove out that what we've projected from a business case has actually been really on the mark, or even sometimes conservative. So it's just been a kind of a great data point on how the modeling works. But I think, Maria, to that question, it's kind of easy to put out an aggressive business case and shoot for the moon, but it's really about, what's kind of a realistic barometer or ROI that's very likely based off past experience and other deployments and data points, right? And I'm sure Wayne sees quite a bit of this from value engineering and other folks at Blue Yonder is that, you look to put forth these kind of transformational supply chain projects and in organizations that fine tuning that value proposition is really important.
No, absolutely. I think that, whenever we speak to people, I think there's still a fear factor around the utilization of these technologies. And I think it comes from people not fully understanding the benefits they can get from them. I think as a result, kind of the use of things like POCs are becoming even more important to really drive business change and people to understand the benefits that it can deliver. Because, I often joke for myself, having kind of, been around in retail for 25 years and worked for a number of kind of mere large retailers, is that retail has changed kind of almost unrecognizably over that time. But actually, many retailers themselves haven't. And many of the core processes they've still got in place are really reminiscent of what they were 25 years ago with some of their technologies. But I think that COVID has really shone a light on terms of those different things. And I think we're really going to see a coming of age. But there's still that resistance that's still within organizations. But I think that when they start seeing the benefits that automation and kind of big data and machine learning can really give for them, which is absolutely transformational on every level, then I think that we're going to see a huge increase in that focus.
I think understanding how, like when I'm approached by someone who's looking to sell their product and they provide the ROI and all of this great data points and things to make a decision with, one thing that I always kind of gets left to the waistline is how does it fit within the organization in total? So a lot of people will sell their product to me. They will sell, this is what we can do for you. But how does it fall in with everything else that we have? There was that New York Times article, I'm sure everyone saw it, with like death by apps at our associates. And so now all of our store associates have 12, 13 apps that they need to bounce around to provide an experience for the customer, and the adoption rate severely declines. There's confusion, things aren't being done correctly. And so being approached by someone with this ROI and this great technology, but also looking at our entire tech stack and understanding what could be removed, what could stay, and what is staying, how do we integrate it and keep it as a whole, so that we don't have 1 million tabs up on a web browser at corporate and 1 million apps on the iPad in the store for all these things.
Yeah, I mean, when I look across the technology estate, I definitely see a lot of technology out there that's kind of an answer looking for a problem. And I think you're absolutely right that I think that every business has got its unique needs. You can't do everything. You have to work out what is your priority and really be focused on that, because, as I say, it can really help those organizations, but you absolutely right, you need that clarity about what is the need for your business, because automation will solve sort of the problem, but ultimately we all know that people, process and systems all have to fit hand in hand. And you're absolutely right. It's about understanding what is right for you and what is it absolutely going to deliver.
Yep.
I do want to go back to what you just mentioned. So people, process, systems, and relate that to the peaks that are coming up or we're expecting to come up now. And you all have some perspectives on it. So I really want to learn more about what volumes you anticipate this year. How do you plan on determining those with the limited historical data that we've got available, and how this works out within 2020, but also looking forward to 2021 as well.
Yeah, I mean, for Untuckit, our projections completely changed based on just the current state of the country and consumer buying methods and whatnot. We're seeing or anticipating a shift from the retail store to online. So we definitely are preparing that experience, ensuring that our sites and code and everything can handle the increase in traffic online. We're hopeful that Black Friday and Cyber Monday will be successful in store, and that we will see that foot traffic, but just ensuring that our associates are safe and ensuring that proper protocols are being followed and that there's everything it's going to be completely different. You're not going to see everyone, you know, lined up to Walmart or whatnot and jumping in. It's going to be definitely a different experience. So we're preparing in that sense. But we do see and anticipate a shift to online. And we're also anticipating a lot of delays in the logistics piece and shipping. And we're thinking about pulling back cutoff dates, which totally affects, you know, the revenue that we anticipated for the holiday season. And finding ways such as buy online, ship from store to kind of pick up the slack is a way that we're anticipating those delays that we'll be seeing. So,
but I think, Jason, I think to that though, I think a lot of retailers are kind of pre-planning and expecting an earlier holiday season than normal. I don't think folks are waiting until the Black Friday, Super Saturday, Cyber Monday. I know, you know, we just launched our new holiday tradition, Shop Safe, Shop Early, encouraging consumers to shop earlier than they normally would. You know, you look at what happened last week with Amazon pushing Prime Day to last week, you know, Walmart, Target offering big sales last week, other retailers doing the same. So I think a lot of retailers are trying to educate the consumer that, you know, this is going to be a very different shopping season and not wait until your typical Black Friday. You know, we've seen on the import side, something else that we do, our global import, you know, our global port tracker, showing that, you know, typically your peak shipping season, you know, not until October, November is when the bulk of the merchandise is coming in, but most of the stuff is going to be here before the end of October. So a lot earlier in the process. So I know, you know, we're trying to do that education campaign. I know other retailers are as well. So the consumer doesn't have to wait and face those shipping delays, which, to be honest, we're already seeing now. I know a lot of retailers on their websites are now talking about, you know, there might be, you know, bear with us, there might be some delays. And I think that's part of the education campaign as well, is to educate the consumer that you might have some delays. You know, might not be able to get that next day, same day, you know, 2-day delivery, but, you know, we're working to do our best, and here's why. So I think a lot of that is incredibly important now, to educate the consumer about how different this holiday season is going to be. But, you know, we're still expecting a strong holiday season despite all the challenges that we've seen. You know, consumers aren't going to be out doing the traveling they normally would, buying the services they normally would. So they might have some extra cash in their pocket to spend on the holiday gifts. I think as we just put out our survey results, I think it was yesterday, you know, we're still looking at consumers spending roughly about $1,000 a piece on holiday merchandise this year. A little bit less than last year, but still extremely strong. But I think there's still a lot of unknowns going into this holiday season as well. So it's going to be a challenge. But again, if the consumer starts shopping earlier than they normally would, hopefully they avoid some of the you know, challenges and delays that we expect to happen later on in the season.
Yep. Very well said.
Do you anticipate that as a result of some of those shipping concerns, that kind of will be an interesting dynamic? Obviously, on one hand, there is the shift to online, but actually it may force people to go back to stores because they're worried about the shipping concerns.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Go ahead, Jason.
No, you can.
You have the direct experience.
Yeah, that's definitely a piece that we're anticipating too. It's very tough. We really don't know. This is unprecedented. We have no data, historical data, as Maria suggested, to even look back and say, oh, this happened 2-3 years ago, and we saw this, and maybe we'll see something similar. It would be very interesting to see if the concerns of shipping will drive more people to store. I'm interested to see if the week before Christmas, is that going to be, you know, a wild, you know, Black Friday experience, or is it going to be normal foot traffic? I'm not quite sure. Are people going to be in panic mode because whatever they ordered didn't arrive, and they're just going to show up to the store to make that purchase? It also depends on if there's a vaccine, if the next wave is good or bad, are stores opening or closing? So it's just really difficult to anticipate that for us. Yeah.
I think, Jason, you had said before about the you've got a boss shipment, that the store employee is having to fulfill, and then you've got a customer coming in. And so I'm seeing these long lines wrapped around, a Walmart or a Target in the cars, and I'm thinking the cars are on, and then they're polluting the earth. And there's just like all these different things that we could be thinking about that, these challenges and these shifts, right? But Jason, I thought that was an interesting point that, with the boss orders and that being such a great solution to help with this e-commerce, but then there's this other set of solutions. And I think it's, listening to the employees, right? The employees have they're going to know what the customer experience is because they just experienced either an upset customer or a happy, delighted customer, and really listening to the customer and understanding in the moment I don't know how quickly Untuckit or other brands could get that information, but being able to take that information and then doing something with it would be, I think, very important for this holiday season and beyond. Again, not knowing how long we'll be utilizing some of these techniques or other ones, being adopted.
Yep, I agree.
I'm curious to hear from you, Melissa, Wayne, and Gina as well, when it comes to data from your clients and determining that historical kind of, data set for this year. Do you have any potential to do that or to predict or to look into the future based on what you've seen from your clients and volumes that came through for them this year?
So within Blue Yonder, we've got a kind of a mixture of customers that are using traditional statistical forecasting, and then a lot are now utilizing our machine learning capabilities. And in many respects, machine learning kind of came of age during COVID for us as well. But obviously, on one hand, in the first few days, there really wasn't that data precedent that Jason was talking about. But very quickly, it was able to respond and understand really what were short-term blips, what were kind of ongoing inclines and declines. And it was able to kind of respond kind of much quicker. And I think responsiveness is going to be really kind of the name of the game over the next year. Because Jason, we'd all be fools to predict what's going to happen next week, never mind in a few months' time. But the ability to have kind of these machines responding really quickly, and I said understanding, which is the key part, kind of what is a blip and what is a genuine trend was really important. So I think that's what we're seeing has been a big kind of enabler for a lot of our different customers. I think also kind of been touched on before is the visibility side of things. Too often, well, not too often, but most, if you speak to many retailers, their biggest tool of choice is still Excel. And whilst that's a fantastic tool, we know that doesn't give you the visibility or the collaboration or the connectiveness that retailers need. So again, if you can't see what's happening, then you can't make the right decision. So a combination of that machine learning capability to be able to predict better, respond better, provide you kind of those insights, I think has been a fantastic enabler to help our customers that have taken that leap survive a lot more than those that may be utilizing older technology. If you found something similar, Melissa and Gina?
Yeah, and it's wow, it's been very interesting, the data component, because when you have parcel carriers that are capping how many packages are going to be able to pick up, or in some cases are terminating their agreements with the customer, data is so important right now, because they're trying to figure out, if I can't use this parcel carrier in my system, and DCs are all built around utilizing a carrier that has now capped the packages they'll pick up, or now they've had, terminated my contract, and regional carriers are impacted as well. So data has been driving really a creative way of how can we utilize the diversification of the parcel carriers with the regional carriers, and then with the last mile solutions, so that we could create a really diversified carrier approach. So data has been huge these past 6 months, in order for companies who feared that the parcel carrier might cap them, asking Geodis, how can we now reinvent and look at and re-engineer our supply chain in order to offset what we see is coming or what has already happened to us. So that's how we're utilizing data today, is to ensure that packages continue to move. And what can they do, ship from store? What can they do with their current DCs? And what can they do with last mile? And really leverage all of these components to ensure that the customers are getting their packages, when they want them. And then, so I think going forward, that really is what I'm feeling brands want. They want more diversification and utilize their data to tell them what is the best scenario for utilizing the different carrier solutions.
Melissa, what about yourself and the robots in the stores and the warehouses, right? It's an interesting thing because it feels like there's a lot of data that could be gleaned from that. But do you have that approach or that possibility to get that sort of insight from it?
Yep. So solutions definitely very data and analytics driven. So lots of real-time information to look at how the operation is performing at any given time horizon, where bots are, where your resources, your people are in your site at any given time, what productivity targets you're hitting, the performance of your operators, how they're doing at a given shift or given point in time, what types of volumes you're fulfilling. And then even, I mean, this may be too granular, but there's so much data and intel that's provided that customers can actually use certain heat maps to then look at reslotting strategies to move faster movers or better sellers to a kind of more prime location. So, I think to the earlier point that was made, it can be overwhelming the amount of data that's available, and it's how do you make it usable and accessible, right, and meaningful, which is something that we've really worked hard to do. So, certainly echo the rest of the team that's an important part.
So I said I'd leave 10 minutes at the end, but there we go. We're left with 4. So I'll ask a quick question. And let's say I'll ask this one from Carrie Zaid. And she's saying, there's a trend now with shoppers ordering multiple sizes, colors of an item so they find the right size. It's been termed bracketing. How are retailers handling returns now, given the new volumes we're seeing?
I think that technology is another piece, again, that can help support that. There's a lot of great tools out there that integrate with your e-commerce platform that allow you to do sizes, put your body weight, your dimensions, sort of do things to play around with the fits, find your fit finders, things of that nature, which I think is helpful in potentially reducing some of those returns. I think the whole buy now, pay later is another tool that helps reduce remorse buying as well. We have seen a little bit of data behind that, but still collecting it. So I think that getting, again, innovative and figuring out, okay, so if that is what's happening and there will be returns, how can we reduce those returns using other tools? But as far as just getting the returns back, yeah, we every holiday season, we anticipate higher than normal returns for that exact reason, buying multiple sizes, buying gifts for friends, exchanges, things like that. Having the right tool to process exchanges, both in store and online. And also Omni as well, being able to bring that return back to the store and process the return, even being able to purchase in a store and then return through an online channel and even exchange for something online is an innovative way to keep the sale within the company and provide a good experience for the customer.
Hey, Jason, real quick on the returns piece. I know, early on, a lot of companies put in place quarantining for return products because of the situation. Did you guys have to do that? Are you doing that, or kind of do you expect any kind of change in practices?
We're doing that both at our warehouse and in stores. We're following all protocols and things that are mandated by local government and state and federal. So there are things at play to ensure that both our customer and our associates are safe when it comes to processing returns.
And I think returns, I mean, it's inevitable. It's going to be, there's going to be a lot of them. And one of the things that I think's important for companies to look at is to make sure that just because it was returned in store, that it's not packed up, put, into a parcel carrier network again, just to go back to the DC. There's
make it productive.
Yes, make it productive. There's kiosks out there. Brands can look into kiosks where they can return to a kiosk. And for that matter, the return could be checked, put back into the kiosk, And then, last mile solution can sweep the kiosk and deliver it same day right in that neighborhood. And it never has to be re-inventoried. It never has to be restocked. I mean, it'll be re-inventoried for sale, but it would not technically have to be restocked, saving some labor there. So I think there's a whole nother thing around returns to be thought of how you used to do it. And then it has to go all the way back to, I mean, you're going to cut out so much cost in the returns just by being able to utilize the store footprint again and analyzing the goods there and then re-inventorying so they could be sold and then hopefully, shipped close to the customer again, right? So I think there's a lot with returns that we could be thinking about.
And Gina, I'll say from the robotics perspective, definitely seeing an increase in that use case as well, right? Supporting returns, processing and put away, replenishment, all those sorts of reverse logistics activities or inbound activities as well, to look at ways to leverage technology and automation to kind of ease the efficiency of it, since that is quite a headache handling returns and those reverse logistics.
Definitely. I think so. It's 4 o'clock now. Maybe we can take 1 minute to get some final thoughts, really quick final thoughts from each of you.
Yeah,
maybe we'll start.
I didn't know if you were going to ask a question from the audience or one of the things I think too is as we think of the Boss and the Boris and the curbside, these are all I would say technically things that we're all utilizing today, but they still could be more efficient. They still could be utilized in a way that is driving more of a customer experience. But I also think, one thing that keeps coming up with a Boris or a curbside is if I was driving there and the line was too long, how do you prevent a lost sale? If I'm going into the store, I've done a Boss order or a Boris and the line's too long or there's just something that's going to prevent me from picking that order up. And I know all the companies, these brands they're very hot on the Boris and the curbside, but when it doesn't go right. So we've got to be thinking about some of these things and look at the future and how do we prevent a lost sale when something like that, a Boris or a curbside. And I know there's data out there saying what is a lost sale today for a Boris or curbside, but is anyone really measuring it or looking at it maybe today? Maybe not. But if you are as a brand, I think there's a way to make sure that we're thinking about the customer again and giving them the convenience. It's about convenience. And when you think about creating some of these ideas, we also got to be thinking about the convenience, or when it doesn't go right, what does that look like? For Untuckit, if the sales reps packing orders for a Boss shipment and the customer walks in, the customer, right, is there. And what do you do? So I think these are all great things to be thinking about as we innovate. I'm excited that we're innovating, but it's going to be really taking it a step further now, this year, and into 2021.
I think that's a good point to leave it off. I know a few of us have a hard stop now. So I'll leave it here, and I'll just wrap up by saying thank you so much, Melissa, Wayne, John, Jason, and Gina for joining me today and answering all of the questions and giving us your insights. Thank you everyone who has attended, and have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.